industry conversation is a conversation. The goal here, really, I did not prepare any slides because I feel like some of you saw me do slides earlier or not. You don't need to see me do slides.
We're all slided out at this point, I think,
we're slided out. We have slid. That really the aim was to just have a conversation and answer people's questions. In the chat, prior to you all joining, I posted a few of the, I think, most comprehensive resources in Wisconsin for folks thinking about clean energy action at the community level. And you should be able to click on those, and another window in your computer will open with that link so you can look at it later.
Hey, Kathy, I think if we joined after you posted that, our chat might not show that. I don't see anything. I don't see anything.
Well, that's completely crazy.
You can just copy and paste though, and paste it now, and everybody should get it.
Okay. So I'll
It is weird that, it just doesn't stay up.
That's super. So I thought I was so smart. I'm going to go on and put them on early. And
this is your punishment for being prepared.
That will teach me to never again. So what these are, I'll just quickly sort of tell you. There is the Clean Energy Toolkit that Renew and Wisconsin Conservation Voters created. There's the Energy on Wisconsin website that Sherry Gruder manages at Extension, that has a lot of information about Wisconsin communities, including the historic stuff about the energy independent communities. Some communities way back in the 2000s made commitments, and if you live in one of those, it's convenient to remind folks. And then also I'm sharing a link off of our Dane County website. So I should say I'm Kathy Kuntz. I'm the director of energy and climate change at Dane County. I'm lucky enough to be in a county where we have aggressive clean energy and climate action. And we have a number of local communities that are pursuing things too. But one of the things we're committed to in Dane County is really helping others follow our lead, do things that we're doing, do other things that inspire us. And so in that spirit, I thought it would be good to have a conversation. So I really just want to open it up to people who have questions, or maybe who have a story to tell about their own community. I see one of my favorite change makers, Mike Noreen, is on the call from River Falls. He might have something fun to say about all the cool things happening in River Falls, which is a place where cool things happen frequently in this space. Not to put you on the spot or anything, Mike.
Don't be shy, Mike.
Well, you did put me on the spot. And it's wonderful. Thanks, Kathy and Sam. Well, I will share, I'll take a couple of minutes. Thanks for asking. And so what I do at the city of River Falls, and I work for River Falls Municipal Utilities, and I'm the Conservation and Efficiency Coordinator. And my task in 2009 was to establish a conservation ethic, which is suitably broad, and so which I liked. And so what I set about was to have behavior change. So that's how I got to know Kathy with Cool Choices, and she had come up, as well as Sam, to in the at City Hall. We would feed people. It started out as maybe 10 people that would show up, and we would initially, I would talk about just energy. And I found that topic wasn't really exciting enough. So expanded that out to sustainability. And also I learned to talk less and listen more, and have people bring their ideas of what they were doing for sustainability, whether it was homelessness or community gardens or solar gardens or a whole host of things. And It grew. So, and up until when COVID hit, we had about between 40 and 50 people showing up every month. And then it was just great conversation, great networking. And I got a great thrill out of, after the meeting was over, people would stick around for half an hour or so in their little groups, and they'd be talking about whatever really excited them. And it good things happened that came out of that. One thing that has come out of that was another group that is called Hope for Creation, and it's a church group. And it's just a bunch of churches, and it's not necessarily Catholic churches. There's Unitarians, there's Buddhists, and their mission is to work on sustainability from the religious standpoint. And through the help of Sam and Renew, we used Solar for Good. We leveraged some of the grants from them, and we are on our third church to put solar on, and it's so visible and wonderful in this community to have. And then you've got all these people that are excited about it that really might not care that much about what the utility is doing, what the city is doing, but they're very excited of what their church is doing. And then they are part of the solution, and great things have happened from that. And I will say it was one of our big wins, and I went in with the hope that we would kind of have the keeping up with the Joneses kind of thing, where we had one church do it, and then and this is the way they say that the First Congregational put it up, and then the Catholics literally said, if they're going to do it, we can do that. And so they did. And then the Lutherans are the same thing. They're like, all right, we can do that. So it's been wonderful. So Sam, thanks a bunch on that one. It's a great program. And if your groups are out there looking for assistance on that, Sam is the man.
It's Mike, it was my pleasure. And Mike doesn't quite do those meetings justice. I mean, I was only at one, but it was quite literally standing room only. And it wasn't just that people showed up for the sake of showing up. I mean, they were engaging, they were asking questions. Same thing to echo what you said is the meeting I was there, if it ended at 1 o'clock, I think, I don't think I got out of there till at least 2. And it was not, the conversations were great, and it was just so exciting to hear. I'm so glad that, friendly competition has fueled such a good environment there in River Falls. On this call also, Nancy Vetter-Schultz is here, and she is doing similar work in sort of the house of worship realm. And Nancy, feel free to talk about what you're doing, because I'm sure there are other people on the call who would like to hear more on this subject too.
Sure, I would be happy to tell you about it. We call our project Array It Forward, and it really has to do with the fact that we put solar panels on First Unitarian Society here in Madison a little over a year ago. And as a result of that, we wanted to array it forward to get other 501c3s to put solar panels on their roofs. So at first, what we were trying to do was to help those nonprofits figure out how to get the federal rebate. And we're still doing that, but now we're doing 3 more things. One is to help them with energy efficiency, because when we put our solar panels on our roof, it decreased the amount of our bill as well as our emissions by 25%. But then doing the energy efficiency work decreased our bill and our emissions by another 25%. So we realized that my husband, Mark, who knows a lot about this, would be a really good one to work with people about energy efficiency and putting them in touch with the organizations that do a professional job at that. So that was number 2. And then we started working with Sam because people started saying, well, we want to support your work. And we said, well, we don't need any money, but, you know, we could help other organizations, you know, incentivize getting solar on their roofs by starting a little fund. So now we have a small fund that is overseen by Renew Wisconsin, which is called the Array It Forward Fund. And we just gave out 3 small grants. And I have to say that our work prioritizes BIPOC people and low-income organizations as well. So these first 3 grants went to those kinds of organizations, one $20,000 grant and 2 $10,000 grants. And then the final thing is related to the first thing I talked about, which is getting the tax rebate. In order to get a tax rebate as a nonprofit, you have to find a tax sponsor. So we have been trying to marry organizations with people who have deep enough pockets to own these solar panels for the 5 years that it's necessary for the organization to get the tax rebate from the feds. And now, even more excitingly, Kathy Kuntz has put us in touch with other people who are in other faith communities. And tomorrow, we have our first meeting to create what we're now calling either Earth Ambassador program or Faith Ambassador for our Planet program. Since we haven't met, we don't have a name yet, but we're going to be ambassadors to various churches in the Madison and area and even in Wisconsin in order to help them with all of those things plus whatever the other people that come to the meeting have in mind. So I've got to say it's a very exciting time for me and for faith communities to do the right thing.
Very cool stuff. So for those of you who just joined us more recently, we're kind of sharing some stories, and you know, if people have questions, the aim of this session was really to be useful to you. You're here because at some level you want to talk about mobilizing your community. The one thing I want to say about River Falls that Mike didn't say, because I think this is normal to him, but for everywhere else, it's extraordinary. In River Falls, from the beginning, they've had this really strong collaboration between the school district and the city and UW River Falls that I've never seen anywhere else in Wisconsin. You know, those are all separate constituencies with their own kind of financial concerns and leadership and whatever. And for whatever reason, there is genuine on the ground cooperation in River Falls. And I think for me, it's always a really inspiring example because I go, okay, the teachers will talk about work Mike is doing, and people at the university will talk about their connections to the schools. And it's just really genuine there that I think probably works better in some ways in smaller communities than some of the big communities I deal with in Dane County, but it's a inspiring example too.
Thanks, Kathy. I appreciate that. And it does help that it's a smaller community with the university. We did do a sustainability proclamation that the university, the school district, and the city all signed back in 2010 to hold all of each other responsible for the actions that we take. And that certainly has helped.
So that sort of shared accountability, that's an interesting way to think about that. Eau Claire has pursued that. You know, Eau Claire has a climate commitment, and they worked with the county to establish one. They worked with the university and the school district to establish one. So they're sort of they've got that local shared accountability too. I think that can be powerful.
Hi, Kathy, it's George. Good to see you. I wanted, since we were talking about the role of the faith community, I wanted to remind everybody of the Pope's great encyclical of 5 years ago, Laudato Si', in which he not only presents a lot of the sound scientific information, but gives us a moral and conscience-based motivation and inspiration for pursuing the health of the environment and particularly global warming and climate change. So if you haven't read that encyclical, I strongly recommend it.
It's a really good point, George. Thanks. I was at a meeting that one of our local faith communities held recently where they talked about the encyclical, and I'd forgotten how there's a lot there about consumerism and there's a strong moral stance around some of these issues there that weren't, for me as local government, there's a lot of value in partnering with groups like Nancy's with the faith community. First, because we reach a broader audience than we reach with our typical kind of environmental friends that we might reach on these issues. But also because they bring a moral voice to this that I think can reach folks in a different way than government agencies can reach them. It's a different kind of persuasion. So, how do we couple all of those things together and increase our odds?
Well, God knows we need moral leadership these days.
More voices can't hurt. Bobby, I see you took your mute off. You have something you want to share there?
Yes, I guess I have a question for Mike. Does River Falls Utilities just do electricity and water, or do you have natural gas by any chance as a utility service?
We do not do natural gas, electric, water, and sewer.
Okay. Well, then I have a more general question.
There's some constraints that we have. Municipal utility.
I have a more general question. I think it's great that we're making a lot of progress with solar. Solar addresses the electric part of our carbon footprint, but I don't see anywhere near the same progress in the natural gas area. We're in January, we're mostly heating with natural gas in our various abodes, and mostly we're not doing anything to convert them to heat pumps. We're not doing anything to reduce our natural gas consumption for heating. And our communities are not requiring utilities to provide clean alternatives to natural gas, like renewable natural gas, nor are they requiring new buildings to be installed with heat pumps. In fact, they're allowing utilities to continue to connect natural gas to new buildings that will be here for 60 to 100 years. And I'm wondering, is anyone doing anything about that around the state that the folks in this group are aware of?
So I can tell you in the discussion, was that just yesterday? Ned Knoll in Eau Claire talked about they're actually working on with a local builder there on an all electric subdivision in Eau Claire. So there, and there was an all electric subdivision in the Milwaukee area a couple of years ago. I think that was all electric. It was all electric heat. It's not clear to me. I've had some conversations with builders. I think we're all starting to have these discussions in the 101 before lunch today. Robin Lisowski was talking about heat pumps, and the cold climate heat pumps are becoming more and more effective in our climate. There's decent research saying that in new construction, cold climate heat pumps can provide the heat needed in our climate. It's trickier in existing homes because our existing homes tend to be leaky and it's just hard to get them to that point. I can tell you for Dane County, we think that in this decade, we'll start seeing some transition to heat pumps, but we really expect the bulk of that transition to happen after 2030. Just because of where the technology is and how fast we can move that. We're aiming to cut our emissions in half by 2030, and we're doing the things that are most cost effective first. And natural gas is a tough one right now because, as you know, the natural gas prices are low. And so there's, some trick there in terms of how we make it affordable for customers to make that transition. In existing homes, in new construction where you don't put in a gas line, it can be cost effective. But I will tell you, and I see a hand up. Frankie, I'm going to turn this to you in just a second. To illustrate, though, where the kind of challenges here are, I talked to a builder one day who is looking at heat pumps, cold climate heat pumps, to heat their homes. And I said something about saving the money not having a gas line. And they said, oh, we're still doing gas lines. People have to have gas stoves and gas fireplaces. And those of you who know me, I'm a terrible poker player. So I'm pretty sure I took my pen and shoved it in my own head at that point. I was like, no, but they were adamant. Nope. They could do heat pumps, but there would be a gas fireplace and a gas stove in the kitchen. So we have some work to do here. Frankie, you had your hand up.
I did, because one of the things, I live in Fort Atkinson in Jefferson County. And a couple years ago, 2 years ago, we hosted a solar group buy program through MREA. And this year we're working, it's not public knowledge yet because we're just getting our RFP together, but we're working with Waukesha County to do a group buy program again. But the other thing is that we have a new plot of land that one of our neighboring towns wants to have us annex. And so it's completely undeveloped. And so we have our group I belong to called Heart of the City, who was the sponsor of the solar group buy programs last year or a couple of years ago and this year. We went and talked to the city and asked them about doing geothermal for any development that occurs, that it's a part of the initial plan. The other thing that we did, and I'm really excited about this, is that while you can't say that you can't require that, or it would be difficult to require that all homes be built for electric use, we did put a requirement on that a certain % of the roof be designed to have, I think it's 20% of the roof of any new housing in Fort Atkinson have, and particularly in this development area, be aligned to be solar ready, to have the and to have the wiring of the house solar ready, so that when people, if they decide they want to put solar panels on their roof, they don't also have to hire an electrician in order to do that. And that will reduce the cost of those those solar installations, and hopefully we'll get them there. The other thing is that we too are looking at heat pumps, our Heart of the City group, and trying to encourage. We've been talking with our community foundation about some way to provide financing for low-income people to be able to access money to put things like heat pumps in their homes.
Very cool
stuff. So I think those are just really small things, and that's as much as we can squeeze out of the piggy bank at this particular time, but it's progress. Slow but sure. And the other thing I have to say is that We Energies is just spending, I don't remember the amount, 18 million sticks in my head for something, for a natural gas plant in Ixonia that I'm thinking that they could have gotten a much bigger bang for their buck had they transformed this into a solar energy plant rather than another natural gas plant. But part of the problem is that they didn't have enough time for research and development or something like that, because they have this old gas plant, I guess, that's about ready to explode or implode or something like that, and this old gas plant needs to be replaced quickly. So
Okay.
whatever. Thank you for listening.
Definitely. I want to build on something you said, and it strikes me that, and I'm going to make a commitment that I'm going to circle back to Sherry Gruder on this, because I feel like Energy on Wisconsin might be a place to do this. When you said you were from Fort Atkinson, I wasn't at all surprised that you started talking about geothermal ground source heat pumps. For those of you who don't know, in Fort Atkinson, a child can go through K through 12 in schools that all have ground source heat pumps, most of which also have solar on the roof. So the world they go to school in is heated and cooled in a comfortable way, September to May, and technologies that other folks think are like not plausible are everyday things to them. So it makes perfect sense to me that community would say, well, why can't this whole development be that? Because we know we're saving money at our schools. The thing that strikes me out of that is, it's kind of a fluke that I know that about Fort Atkinson. I feel like somewhere on that Energy on Wisconsin page, there should be a map where you could hover over cities and know that here all the schools are doing things, there all of this is going on. And so that, because I think that's a leverage point for communities. I mean, Fort Atkinson is Fort Atkinson, it's not Madison. That they've done this across their schools can be inspiring to other places. The first school district in Wisconsin that I remember doing a ground source heat pump was Fond du Lac. And I remember people in other school systems saying to me, well, if Fond du Lac did this, it's normal. That's like a regular place kind of thing. And it's that sort of, we need to put those examples where you all can use them in your communities and go, look, a place like us did this.
I'd like to comment on We Energies. They like to classify natural gas as renewable energy. How they get away with that, I don't know, but that's what they do. So I don't trust them at all. A lot of their leadership in recent years has come from the Southern Company in Atlanta, one of the dirtiest utilities in the country. And I'd like to ask if Wisconsin has elevated its renewable energy portfolio standard at all in the last, since the Tea Party takeover the legislature 10 years ago. Are we still at 10%, way below the surrounding states?
Yeah, the RPS is still at 10%.
That's pathetic.
I see, Nancy, you have your hand up. Did you want to?
Actually, it's Mark this time.
Hi. I'd like to provide some information about this question of heat pumps in Wisconsin, because we do have a cold climate that makes December, January, February operation very inefficient. So some installers will insist on putting an electric coil in the fan area to provide enough heat for really cold temperatures. Another option that, as I've noticed in a couple other discussions about heat pumps during this conference, is that people don't seem to know about hybrid furnaces, also called dual fuel heat pumps. And basically this is, would appear like a gas furnace in a home. It also has a coil in it connected to a heat pump outdoors, and then there's a control system that provides very efficient heating and cooling most of the year. But in the coldest season, it fires up the gas or propane component. There's a website called Pick HVAC, PICKHVAC.com. They have a an example where the added cost of this feature is like $800 or $900 on a furnace replacement. That pays for itself in 3 years with savings because of the efficient heat pump. So there are solutions and ways to save on energy costs here in Wisconsin with air-to-air heat pumps. Obviously, if you have the situation where you can do ground sourcing, then and you've got to dig wells, that's not really something most homeowners would choose. But this hybrid furnace is a viable possibility, and the major furnace companies are all offering these now.
Thanks, Mark. The other thing that I know I'm seeing happen out there is there are folks installing a heat pump where they've got a gas furnace and not taking out the gas furnace. So the gas furnace now runs, 5 days a year and might last another 5-7 years as a backup to the heat pump. I mean, there are some hybrids. Focus on Energy, as of this year, is offering cooling incentives on heat pump systems. So they're recognizing heat pumps as sort of the most efficient way to cool homes. And I think in some ways, that's for them a way to signal support for heat pumps in a transitional way into homes. One of the things that came up in that earlier session Robin did is it's a challenge right now to find installers.
Right.
But communities, I mean, that's another place, we're really here to talk about community initiatives. Certainly, I can tell you from a Dane County perspective, we think part of our responsibility is to be reaching out to the HVAC industry and talking about electrification. About a month ago, the county exec and I did a meeting with the local ASHRAE chapter, so the heating and air conditioning engineers, to talk about how electrification was part of the future and to really engage them in that conversation. It's a start. It's gonna, they're not gonna all change over tomorrow, but it felt like a start to that. And as local government, if we call up ASHRAE and say, hey, we'd like to do a webinar for you, they're inclined to go, sure, people will come to that. I think I'm probably particularly lucky. I have a county exec who will do those sorts of events with me. He likes talking about climate. Bob, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Just a brief comment on the heat pumps, the air source heat pumps. The industry now is talking about or offering something called mini split heat pumps, which can operate outside of the ductwork of the existing gas furnace, so that you could install one of those or several of those in your home, use them for cooling and heating in milder winter weather, and then retain the gas furnace as you suggested, Kathy. And that may be the easier and more efficient way to go in the short run.
Yeah, I think we're going to see more of these options in the coming couple of years, and that will help move that market out.
Yeah, my parents have one of those types of heat pumps, and they live in Duluth. So just to give you an idea of how far the quality of those has come in the last few years. I think they've installed theirs in late 2019, if I remember correctly.
See, I saw a webinar the other day where the photo was from an installation in North Dakota. So it's like, look, guys, this is all going to work. It's okay. Kim, you just took off your mute.
Yeah, as my work as a site assessor for a solar installer, I see a lot of people's bills. And so when I see somebody who has like a ground source heat pump or something like that, and I look at their bills, depending on where they're located, it either works well or doesn't work quite as well. So I'll sometimes see these giant jumps in their electric usage, January, February, March, from those heat pumps. And then they're looking to kind of offset that with solar, which doesn't work fantastically, because if they have lower bills in the summer and now they're trying to offset this giant winter with solar, that doesn't work great. That doesn't pair well. So I'm just wondering, from people here who've worked with that, are there places you would not suggest heat pumps because of whatever their ground type is or whatever other things? Or are we solely talking about the air source, the mini splits and things like that? Just wondering if there's reasons we wouldn't suggest that ever.
I think it's a really interesting question, Kim, and it does, I mean, what you're saying makes a lot of sense, that the pairing, I mean, obviously a solar system can still shave off some of those costs in the winter for that household, but you're not going to take it, you're going to make it better than their old, even with gas. You know, lots of homes get winter bills that are higher, but yeah, as we move to electrification, that shifts when the electric bills are high, because instead of gas, you're paying higher electricity in the winter. Yeah, I think we're not to a place where that's all perfect yet, but yeah.
Yeah, in our Ask a Solar Installer conversation yesterday, this type of question came up, and our solar installers said kind of the same thing that you said, Kim. Like, if it's a ground source heat pump, it's not going to be as effective as even when you pair it with solar. But some of the air source ones are. That's the one that my parents have, and they have solar too. They're making me look really bad, honestly, in comparison. But I think it's you know, Kim, you probably know this. It's every situation is kind of a one-off, and you can't just make a blanket statement of like, you know, this particular geographical area does. But yeah, it's a little trickier in Wisconsin, and you know, heating is definitely something I've noticed that has come up a lot in many of the conversations today, and that's definitely something we're gonna have to take a look at here. It's something that's gonna have to confront us here at some point.
I think though, and it is, and heating is going to continue to be an issue for us. I can say though, because you know, I'm thinking about adaptation issues as well as mitigation issues around climate. Cooling is also a thing that's going to be increasingly important in our communities. You know, every decade we see more high heat events across Wisconsin, and communities like ours, where high heat is an infrequent event, are much more at risk for negative health outcomes than a place like Phoenix, where it's hot for months on end. People in Phoenix know how to deal with heat. People in places like Wisconsin don't always know how to deal with that heat. So that's a piece of this too, that communities have to increasingly think about. How are we keeping particularly vulnerable populations safe? And for me, part of the advantage of thinking about all electric systems forward is that most typically we're going to get cooling in addition to heating there, and we're not going to have as many summer risks as, I mean, it's weird to think about that today because we're not in a summer risk day out there where I'm sitting, but those are real, and they're going to become kind of an increasing risk in each of our communities in the next decade.
I see.
Let me give you some breaking news. I got an email this morning from James Hansen, who's one of the world's leading climatologists. It's a report on the 2020 world or global temperatures. They tied 2016 for the highest on record, and the highest 6 years, the warmest 6 years, been the last 6 years, and the rate of increase is accelerating. So that's the dire news from the science world.
Yeah, in my former life, I was a meteorologist, and I definitely have been. It seemed like all the way back to October that this year was still, even with, you know, cutting a lot of transportation and you know, building use, that was going to be the case. So not surprised at all to see that, sadly. I see Dean on this call. Dean, you're a solar consultant, and by the looks of your phone number, from probably somewhere in northwest Wisconsin. Just wondering if you have anything to add on the heat pump question.
Sure. You know, I'm on the sales end of I work with Carlson Electric out of Hayward. Tim Dilly, I think you might know Tim. Yeah, I'm more of on the sales and marketing side for Carlson here in the Eau Claire, Chippewa Falls area. You know, I let the engineers deal with the aspects of the heat pumps and whatnot. But what I do know, I was just in a place just north of us here, talking to a gentleman, had a beautiful home on the lake, and we were talking about solar for the house. We're talking about a ground mount. He had an in-ground water pump, and you know, it was put in at a certain time where I talked to another gentleman, colleague of mine, that he is a passive house builder in northern Wisconsin, and they only build houses that will need zero. Like they could build a house that would use zero electricity if they had the funds to do it. So they have all kinds of restrictions that they have to go by. And he flat out told me, he said, Dean, you know, depending on the depth of this, depending on the quality of the install, depending on when it was installed, there's so many things that can go into that when it comes to what you can replace that with your solar. Can you tie it in? Do we have to replace it? Do we have to replace the whole thing? So there's a lot of things that go on from an engineering standpoint, I guess, when you're looking at replacing it or modifying it. If you're putting in something brand new, that's a little bit different. And, you know, just to hit one of the things Robert said too, I think he was trying to get to, are there any legislative ideas from the state level that would actually make the new home builders, the new buildings, when it comes to commercial, to hit certain criteria that would do that? You know, I know Fort Atkinson they're working on something locally there, but from a state level, anybody building new homes, you know, I know it'll probably happen down the road, but there should be some criteria, just like there is now with the state. They have to meet certain criterias, and boy, having some of the criteria when it comes to solar and hydropower and everything else, that would be great. If there's anything at the state level being discussed or not.
So there is the state building codes, the governor's climate change task force recommended updating the state building codes. And my understanding is that process is starting.
Yes,
So there's potential there.
Yeah, if I could
Might take a little bit.
Yeah, well, Ross, I should have seen you were on the call. Ross can speak.
Oh, thank
to
you.
this.
Yeah, I mean, they had a meeting in December, you know, about talking about updating the building codes. The Uniform Building Code in the state is based on the 2009 International Energy Conservation Code, and they just came out with the 2021 code. They update it every 3 years, so you could see how far behind we are. You know, and again, I mean, they're the worst buildings you can build legally is really what it comes down to. So there's a long way to go, you know, for updating the building codes in Wisconsin, you know, on the residential side. And I just wanted to stress that, you know, they talk about heat pumps, and we have to, I think in the future somewhat, you know, what will housing be like? You know, we think of it in these terms with the existing housing stock and the existing technologies that we have right now, and the existing electricity grid and you know, share of renewable energy that there is in the existing grid. You know, new batteries are coming out. There may be new technologies of doing something like, you know, supplementary gas heating with a heat pump. The house I'm living in now, when I got here, I saw that they had ripped out a combination heat pump gas furnace system. So they ripped the heat pump out and replaced it with a conventional air conditioner. So apparently it didn't work well, or the efficiencies were really low, you know, and so it wasn't effective. But I think, you know, the industry will adapt. I think existing homes will be low-hanging fruit for upgrading, you know, to increase the efficiency, because the better insulated your house is, the smaller the furnace is that you need. You know, so there'll be a lot of opportunity to work with existing homes to upgrade them.
We need some more passive house builders in the central to southern part of the state too. You know, I know a couple in the state that are in the northern part of the state, and you know they'll go anywhere. But boy, that's an up and coming market if you can build a home that would require half the electricity, half the heat. And yeah.
Yeah. Well, in building, I mean, I think Ross's point about building for the future, I mean, it ties back to what Frankie said about, you know, you make those homes solar ready so that later when someone wants to put PV on, they don't have to rip open the walls to put that wiring in. You know, it's thinking forward instead of backward in some of this.
I mean, that would be a very simple legislative thing to put in, you know, do it now. It's going to need it in 10 years. Very simple. Right. Let's wire it now for solar in the future.
Yeah. I mean, you know, and to speak to how these things move forward and then backward. So more than a decade ago, I was at Focus on Energy. And at that point, we were giving builders incentives to build PV ready homes. So that was 2010.
10 years ago.
Yeah. And then, you know, for various reasons, I think that went out of favor, but I know there are some builders who are still doing that, who are still, because it was like, I don't know, like $100 of wire in the wall that meant that it was ready to be installed. It was a trivial thing. And if you put it into your process, you just kept it.
Piece of conduit. It wouldn't even have to be wired, you know, just some way to get it down there, you know?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of Focus, is Don here?
No.
See, I was going to add, Kathy, too, that Wisconsin has a state statute that says that you cannot build or you cannot mandate that a home be built any better than the statewide code. So no local jurisdiction can have a stricter code than what the statewide code is. It's a state statute, and it's going to take a change in the legislature to get that changed.
Yeah. Right. So that means that a local community Dane County can't say, you know, we want net zero ready homes built in Dane County. Well, we can say we want that. We just can't require it. Bob.
We may be able to do something else though at a community level. State statutes regulating public utilities allow municipalities to regulate the nature of utility service in the municipality. And in the case of most municipalities, one of those services is natural gas. Now, perhaps a municipality could say that we require that natural gas be replaced by phased in renewable natural gas and or hydrogen within a certain time frame. And that would be justified under that existing, long existing Wisconsin statute. So that you might be able to do something like that, but you can't tell a builder he's got to build the 2021 standards. At least until we change that stupid statute, and hopefully that'll be soon.
That whole space is certainly frustrating to communities that we can't kind of do more in this space. I want to address, Jenny had a question in the chat about district heating, and I just want to, because she was thinking district heating might be a way to address heating in homes in Wisconsin, and let folks know that today, particularly in the Northeast and in Toronto, there are companies doing neighborhood district heating systems. You know, particularly in the Northeast, in the Boston area, you've got really aging natural gas infrastructure and a need to replace that infrastructure. And in some cases, they're deciding it's more cost effective to do district heating in those neighborhoods when they replace those pipes that are, you know, fragile at this point, rather than replacing them and staying with natural gas. And it's kind of to Ross's point about what's the future. Why would you rebuild this thing that we don't think is going to happen? So there are places where those, and Sam, a thing for you to maybe think about as Renew in that space. So providing thermal power to people under Wisconsin law is different than providing electric power to them. I'm not sure if I said that like in a way a lawyer would, but whichever HVAC guy talked to me about this was like, we think in Wisconsin you could do this because providing heat to people is really different than providing electricity under statute. So there might well be ways communities could look at that. And I don't know, from what Ned said about that Eau Claire project, it wasn't clear to me if those were like separate geothermal systems for each house or a district kind of thing. I made a big note to follow up with him. And of course, I've just been at the summit since then, but I think he might have an interesting story to tell us in a year and a half or something.
Yeah, where is he? We need to get him in on this call. I mean, I'm glad you let me know about that because I had no idea that heating versus electric was a thing. So as you can see, I am still growing into my new role here.
Well, it's like a weird, like you're providing heat, not, it's some, lawyers wrote those codes, not physicists kind of thing. So people not thinking about what is energy sort of thing. What else? We have a little bit of time, but are there burning questions out there we haven't gotten to?
Yeah, I have one quick question, if that's okay. I'm just wondering, I'm in central Wisconsin area, and there's a lot of conservatives in this area. So when I'm looking at any sort of project that's a community-based church or a municipality or something like that, you'll usually have a person or a couple of people who are super engaged and really want to do it. And then a number of other people who are like, okay, you're kind of hippies, what's going on? What studies, what financial information do you use to show people who may not want to do something with solar because of the carbon or the climate aspects of it? How do you change their minds with the financial aspect? What studies do people use on that?
So it's a great question, Kim. And one of the links I wish I would have put in the thing and I didn't is there's a group called the Wisconsin Conservative Energy Forum. And they are really strong advocates for renewable energy solely from a cost perspective. They don't want to talk about climate change or sort of any of the stuff I talk about all the time. They're saying, this is the cheapest way to do it, and you own your own energy. That's a strong conservative principle. I would look at ways to like maybe connect so if you're in an early stage and you've got a few enthusiasts, I know they've got speakers who are willing to show up and talk to groups about this, because I think we've been in this situation where these issues have become really politicized, and the folks leading that group were legislative aides in the Capitol to Republicans. And for years, one of them talks about how he was opposed to any clean energy kind of incentives. But now it's cheaper. Of course you would do it. This is like, and he does that in a really genuine way that I think can speak to folks and help them see that the math has really changed. This isn't some, and we're not, we're the faith communities that are doing these systems are saving money that they get to spend on things they want to spend their money on.
Yeah, but when it comes to fossil fuels, they rarely factor in the environmental damage.
Sure, but George, my point is you don't even have to anymore. Just straight up, the renewables are cheaper.
Yeah, I've been on a couple of Scott's tours with lawmakers, and I was lucky enough to be on one with a rather prominent conservative lawmaker, and it was a wind farm that we were touring, and the mayor of the town where the wind farm was located in was talking to the folks, and he said, the wind farm, the tax payments for this pay for our budget for the whole year. And this unnamed lawmaker raised his hand and said, "Can you repeat that?" And he did. And he actually like did the thing, you know, in like comedy shows where they like look at their friend and they, really, is that true? And it is. And that's what, you know, we've been talking about this at Renew for a long time, is the economics are on our side now. Kathy and I were just talking about this yesterday too. This ball is already kind of in motion. You know, there are solar projects and wind projects going in very conservative areas. And I'm not saying, Cam, I'm certainly not saying that there isn't opposition and that's not something to consider, but they are happening, and the opposition, specifically where it's coming from is not necessarily politically motivated anymore.
What else? We have just a couple of minutes.
Did I just silence everyone? Did I really do that? That can't be true.
No, but thank you for those answers. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we do have a couple more minutes. Any other parting thoughts anyone wants to talk about?
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, my wife runs a program at the library in Monona called Eco Action Tuesdays. And we've had, you know, Bob Lindmeyer, who's one of the local meteorologists here, do a great presentation on climate change. I think that's a great way to reach out to the community. So if you have anybody in your local communities or libraries that's running programs, you might suggest something like that. And what's neat about it now is that, you know, we had 40 people listen to his talk. We never would have gotten 40 bodies into the library to actually listen to his talk. So it's actually more effective to do it online. So if you wanted somebody like Bob to do a present, and I'm not offering up his services, but I'm saying somebody like him to do a presentation, you know, I think it's a great opportunity to do it through your local library and have somebody like that speak.
And I just want to add that the Faith Ambassadors for the Planet project that's incipient includes Bob Lindmeyer. So we're intending to send him out and have him talk to as many churches as possible and then follow up with all of the various things that we can provide. So right. I'm excited about that.
Yes.
You know, this raises a really important subject, and that is education. To what extent is accurate scientific information being taught in grade school, in high school? You know, not just to adult groups, mostly at churches. We've got to get it into the school system, and I'm not sure where we stand on that.
I think we're in pretty good shape, actually, with the Wisconsin standards, and there is climate information there. The thing to remember about schools in Wisconsin is that there's local control. So while the state DPI can have educational standards, they don't mandate what happens in individual classrooms. There is a piece of this that probably circles back to community engagement and knowing what happens in the schools in your community.
And I've just got to say, the youth climate strike last year is an indication that we really are at a point where our youth are starting to lead. And I have to admit that in my case, I was doing some work in terms of climate, but when they stood up and said, I'm not going to have the life that I should have, I went, oh my goodness, I've got to do more. So I do think our youth are leading, and I think that's wonderful.
I just want to build on that quickly before we close, because I can't believe I didn't say this. But here in Dane County, there's actually a junior at Middleton High School who created a Dane County Youth Environmental Council that is like 20 high school students from across the county who gather virtually and strategize about climate action and clean energy in their school districts and communities. So there's like really amazing, and she just did that. Like she just reached out to other high schools and talked to science teachers and said, are there students who might want to be part of my group? and kind of organically grew this amazing group of young activists. I mean, there are, I think, amazing things going on out there that we can all leverage. I want to be respectful of your time. It's 3 o'clock. This was a fun discussion. If you've got other questions, feel like you can reach out to folks who are here. We're all in the attendee list. You can find people there. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. And I just want to say, on behalf of Renew, just thanks so much for attending. This is our 10th annual Renewable Energy Summit. We've really enjoyed, connecting with everyone as best we can, of course, remotely over the last few days. I really want to say thanks to our sponsors, especially our presenting sponsors, which are Arch Electric, Green Penny, and Invenergy. And also thanks to our amazing and talented speakers and panelists. Kathy, shout out to you. While we certainly hope we can connect in person in the future, we just really want your feedback as well. So if you can do that, we'll be emailing out an evaluation tomorrow. So please fill that out. It helps us form how we start planning for next year, which honestly will happen on Monday. So please tell us what we did right and how we can improve. And just once again, we're really grateful that you could spend time with us. And thanks for everything that you do to advance renewable energy in Wisconsin. So thank you again so much, and please take care.
And thank
Thanks,
you
everybody.
for a great conference.
Great job, Kathy and Sam.
And thank you, Kathy. Great conversation.
Thanks, Nancy.
Hey, Sam, this is Dean again. Are you still there?
Yes. Yes.
Hey, would it be possible for me to just send you an email? I'd love to get you some information on RoofMax. It's another part of my business, but
Yep,
it goes
I'll
with
put it-
solar. It goes with solar so well. It's actually an all natural roof treatment for asphalt roofs that
Okay.
protects and maintains the roof. But
Oh, interesting.
we're spraying around and under panels, current installations, and we're also protecting that roof before installations go on to prevent the need for someone to put on a new roof. Because as we
Okay.
all know, we want your roof to be as good as possible before we put solar installations on. But it's called RoofMax, RoofMaxx. And
Okay.
if you don't mind, I'll email you some information, and anybody else interested it's a fantastic product, and my company services that as well. But I didn't want to, my shameless plug, I guess, but
That's okay.
I just wanted to make sure before I sent it to you.
Yeah, I put my email in the chat. Feel free to send me that information.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Good to
Thank
see
you.
you.
Thanks.
Should I
Thanks. Good
email,
to see you.
Kathy, should I email you about the
Yep.
Dane
Email
County?
me about Daphne and I'll connect you. Yep.
Okay, I will do that. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.